There comes a moment in every life when the weight feels unbearable, when the path ahead looks foggy and the voice inside whispers, "Maybe this is it. Maybe I can't go on." It is in that very moment that the decision to never give up is born, not in triumph, not in glory, but there comes a moment in every life when the weight feels unbearable, when the path ahead looks foggy, and when the voice inside whispers that maybe this is the end. Maybe it is time to stop trying. That is the exact moment when the choice to never give up is born, not in celebration, not in triumph, but in the quiet defiance of a heart that refuses to surrender. Choosing not to give up does not mean you will never stumble. It does not mean the road will suddenly open wide and smooth. What it truly means is that you will give yourself permission to stand back up, even when the ground feels unsteady, even when the voice of doubt is loud. It means honoring the small flicker inside you that still believes, however faintly, that something more is possible. The truth is, we are taught to admire the polished stories of success, but rarely do we see the messy middle that every person has to walk through. That middle is filled with nights of doubt, failures that sting, and shame that whispers you are not enough. But the middle is not a mistake. It is where resilience is born. It is in those raw and unpolished chapters that courage is stitched together, thread by trembling thread. Every time you stand back up after falling, you are not only moving forward, you are rewriting the story of what you are capable of. Failure will knock on your door, and sometimes it will stay longer than you wish. But failure is not a verdict. It is a teacher, and its lessons are written in discomfort. It asks you a simple but piercing question: will you stay down or will you rise and try again? Choosing to rise is not about proving strength to the world. It is about proving kindness and faith to yourself. When you say yes to rising, you are saying yes to the possibility that life has more to give you and that you have more to give life. To never give up is not about chasing perfection. It is about persistence. It is about the willingness to keep showing up even when the outcome is uncertain. It is about treating yourself with compassion when you fall short, and still having the courage to take the next step. Sometimes those steps are small, so small they feel invisible, but every small step in the middle of struggle is a victory of the spirit. It is proof that you are still moving, still choosing, still alive in the fight for what matters. When the storm rages and the light feels dim, remember that your resilience is deeper than fear. Your hope is stronger than despair, and your spirit was never meant to quit. The call to never give up is not about what the world expects of you. It is about what your own heart deserves from you, a chance to rise again and again, quiet defiance against despair. To never give up doesn't mean you won't stumble. It doesn't mean you won't feel broken or lost at times. What it truly means is that you give yourself permission to stand back up, even when the ground beneath you feels unsteady. It means you honor the part of yourself that still believes, however faintly, that something more is possible. Failure is not a dead end. It is a teacher disguised in discomfort. When failure arrives, it rarely comes gently. It arrives with weight, with the sting of disappointment, with the ache of dreams that did not unfold the way you hoped. It feels like loss, like rejection, like being told you are not enough. Yet beneath that heaviness lies an invitation, a hidden lesson that cannot be learned in moments of ease. Failure bends us, sometimes even breaks us open, so that we may see what strength and wisdom were lying quietly beneath the surface, waiting to be uncovered. The discomfort of failure is not meant to destroy you, it is meant to sharpen you. It strips away illusions and forces you to confront what is real. It asks you to look at yourself honestly, not at the image you wish to maintain, but at the truth of who you are in that moment. That discomfort is often the very place where clarity is born. It asks you, what truly matters? What are you willing to keep fighting for, even when the world does not hand you an easy victory? Failure reveals not just your limits, but also your deepest values. To treat failure as a teacher requires a shift in perspective. Instead of seeing it as an ending, You begin to see it as part of a greater unfolding. Every failure holds within it information about what does not work, about where you need to grow, about the resilience you didn't know you had. These lessons rarely come wrapped in comfort. They come through the sting of trying and falling short. They come through the silence of doors closing. Yet in time they reveal themselves as the very experiences that shaped your courage and your capacity to keep moving forward. Many people stop at the doorway of failure, assuming that because they stumbled, the path is closed. But failure is not a locked gate. It is a signpost. It does not say the end. It says, "This way is not working. Try another." If you are willing to listen, failure points you toward possibilities you would never have seen without it. It shows you the resilience hidden in persistence, the creativity sparked when the obvious path no longer exists, the humility that grows when you realize you are not invincible, but you are still capable of rising. What makes failure such a powerful teacher is the way it pushes us to transform our relationship with ourselves. In those moments of defeat, the temptation is to label ourselves as unworthy, to turn the failure into a reflection of our identity. But the deeper truth is that failure is never who you are. It is only something you experienced. To carry its lesson rather than its weight is the art of resilience. You learn to thank failure not because it was easy, but because it gave you what comfort never could. A deeper strength, a sharper vision, and the quiet courage to rise again. We live in a world that praises success stories but often skips over the messy middle, the nights of doubt, the failures that sting, the shame that whispers you're not enough. But that messy middle is where resilience is born. It is where courage is stitched together, thread by trembling thread. When you refuse to give up, you're not just moving forward. You are rewriting the story of what you're capable of. Resilience grows when we allow ourselves to be vulnerable and still rise again. At first, this may feel like a contradiction because we are often taught that resilience is about being unshakable, about standing tall and showing no cracks. But real resilience is not about building walls around ourselves. It is about allowing the walls to fall, feeling the weight of the moment fully, and still choosing to rise. Vulnerability is not weakness. It is the place where strength is forged, because it requires honesty, courage, and the willingness to be seen in our raw humanity. When life pushes us down, the instinct is often to protect, to hide the pain, to pretend that everything is fine. Yet resilience does not grow in denial. It grows in the willingness to admit, "This hurts, I am scared, I feel broken." That admission is not defeat. It is the opening through which healing begins. To be vulnerable is to stand in the truth of your experience without armor, without pretense, trusting that you can face the reality of what is happening. From that place of honesty, the path to rising again becomes possible. Each time we allow ourselves to feel fully, we create space for growth. The tears, the doubt, the uncertainty, all of these are part of the process that strengthens us. They stretch our capacity to endure, to adapt, and to trust that even when life knocks us down, we are not defined by the fall. Resilience is born in the act of getting up, not because the pain is gone, but because something inside us whispers that we are meant to continue. Rising again after being vulnerable is an act of defiance against despair, a declaration that what tried to break us will not have the final word. It is easy to mistake resilience for perfection, for getting it right every time, for never faltering, but resilience is far more human than that. It is about stumbling, making mistakes, admitting when you do not know the way, and yet moving forward anyway. Vulnerability gives resilience its depth, because without it, our rising is shallow. When we rise while still holding the truth of our pain, we rise authentically. That authenticity not only strengthens us, but also connects us to others who have walked through their own struggles. The beauty of resilience shaped by vulnerability is that it transforms the way we see ourselves. Instead of viewing scars as flaws, we begin to see them as evidence of survival. Instead of feeling shame for our struggles, we begin to recognize them as the very soil in which courage grows. Each rise after vulnerability becomes proof of our capacity to endure and to begin again. Resilience is not built in pretending we are untouched by life. It is built in facing life as it is, with open hearts, with trembling hands, and with the steady decision to stand back up again and again. Failure will visit you, it visits us all, but failure is not a verdict, it is a conversation. It asks, will you stay down or will you rise and try again? Choosing to rise is not about proving strength to the world, it's about proving kindness and faith to yourself. The stories we tell ourselves in hard times shape whether we stop or continue. When challenges strike, it is not only the weight of the situation that determines how we respond, but also the meaning we attach to it. Our inner dialogue becomes a compass, quietly guiding us toward resilience or resignation. Two people can face the same storm, yet the difference between surrender and perseverance often lies in the story each one chooses to carry within. In the midst of hardship, the mind searches for understanding. It tries to make sense of why things unfolded as they did, and in that search, stories are born. Some of those stories sound like, "This always happens to me. I will never succeed. I am not strong enough." These stories tighten around us like chains, convincing us that the struggle is final, that there is no point in moving forward. Other stories, however, sound different. "This is painful, but it is not the end. I can grow through this. I may fall, but I can rise again." These stories open the door to hope, to patience, to the possibility of change. The power of these stories lies in the fact that they do not merely describe our experiences, they shape them. A story of defeat creates a lens that narrows our vision until we see only the obstacles. A story of resilience, even when whispered through tears, expands our vision and reveals paths we could not see before. Hard times do not ask us to deny our pain, but they ask us to choose which voice we will amplify, the voice of despair or the voice of persistence. Often, the first story that arises in hardship is harsh. It comes from fear, from shame, from the memory of past wounds. But stories are not fixed. We have the ability to rewrite them. Rewriting does not mean erasing what happened. It means reframing how we hold it. Instead of saying, "I failed, so I am worthless," we can say, "I failed, so I am learning." Instead of saying, "This pain will break me," we can say, "This pain is shaping me into someone stronger." Each time we adjust the story, even slightly, we shift the direction of our steps. The stories we tell ourselves in hard times also determine how we treat ourselves in the process. If the story is cruel, we meet our struggles with judgment and shame. If the story is compassionate, we meet them with patience and kindness. That compassion becomes fuel, reminding us that stumbling does not mean stopping, and that every step forward, no matter how small, is worthy of honor. Hard times are inevitable, but the stories we carry through them are a choice. They can keep us anchored in defeat, or they can help us rise into resilience. The narrative we choose becomes the ground on which we walk, and it is that ground which decides whether we remain in place or keep moving toward what lies ahead. Every step you take in the face of struggle is a declaration, "I am still here." And sometimes that is the most powerful thing you can say. A very small step taken in struggle is a victory of the spirit. When life feels heavy, when obstacles loom large and uncertainty clouds every direction, even the idea of moving forward can feel impossible. In those moments, the mind often whispers that progress must be grand, that change must be dramatic, that only leaps count as success. But the truth is that resilience is not always measured in giant strides. Sometimes it is measured in the smallest of movements. A single step, a quiet choice to keep going when stopping feels easier. Struggle has a way of distorting perspective. It convinces us that if we cannot solve everything at once, then nothing is worth doing. Yet this is precisely where the wisdom of small steps becomes clear. A small step does not dismiss the weight of the challenge, nor does it erase the difficulty. What it does is affirm the spirit's refusal to be paralyzed. That refusal, even in its simplest form, is a triumph. To choose to get up after falling, to take a breath when fear overwhelms, to make one call, write one line, or simply rise to meet another day. Each of these acts is proof that the spirit is still alive in the fight. The victory lies not in the scale of the action, but in the courage it takes to act at all. A single step, however small, is a declaration that you are not defeated. It is the voice of persistence whispering louder than the voice of despair. In those fragile moments, the spirit shows its quiet strength, reminding you that movement, no matter how slow, is still movement. The mountain may remain vast, but each step taken in its shadow is evidence that the climb has already begun. Small steps also carry a hidden power. They build momentum. One action, however modest, opens the door to another. Progress does not appear suddenly. It is stitched together piece by piece, day by day, until what once felt insurmountable becomes something you are living through. Looking back, you often realize that the moments you thought were insignificant were actually the foundation of your resilience. They taught you discipline in the face of doubt, patience in the face of delay, and faith in the face of fear. What makes each small step a victory of the spirit is the intention behind it. It is a choice to honor life, to honor your own strength, to affirm that you are still moving forward even when no one else can see the progress. These steps are deeply personal. They may go unnoticed by the world, but they are etched into the core of your being as proof of your perseverance. Every small step taken in struggle carries a truth. You are not defined by the weight of what you face, but by the persistence of your spirit. And each step, however modest, is a quiet but powerful reminder that you are still here, still choosing, still rising. So when the storm rages and the light feels dim, remember this: never give up. Not because the journey will be easy, but because within you lives a resilience deeper than fear, a hope stronger than despair, and a spirit that was never meant to quit. Never giving up is less about perfection and more about persistence with compassion for yourself. Too often, the idea of perseverance gets tangled with an image of flawless strength. Never faltering, never making mistakes, never questioning yourself. But real perseverance is far more human, far more tender. It is not about presenting yourself as unbreakable. It is about continuing forward despite the cracks, carrying your imperfections as proof that you are alive and still willing to try. Perfection demands that every step be certain, every choice be correct, every outcome be successful. But life does not unfold that way. There will be missteps, failures, and moments of deep doubt. If you tie the idea of never giving up to perfection, you set yourself up for exhaustion, because the first stumble will feel like proof that you have already failed. Persistence, on the other hand, acknowledges the stumbles as part of the path. It is about returning again and again, not with harshness, but with gentleness toward yourself. Compassion is what makes persistence sustainable. Without compassion, perseverance becomes rigid and punishing. You push yourself forward out of fear or shame rather than out of courage and hope. But when you meet yourself with kindness in the struggle, you allow room to breathe, to recover, to begin again without carrying unnecessary weight. Compassion says, it's okay to have fallen, it's okay to feel tired, what matters is that you choose to rise. That voice of understanding softens the edges of persistence, making it less about punishment and more about resilience. Every act of persistence requires a dialogue with yourself. The inner critic will demand more, pointing out flaws and magnifying setbacks. But compassion counters that voice by reminding you that progress is not linear and that your worth is not measured by unbroken success. To persist with compassion is to keep moving, not because you must prove something, but because you believe you are worth the effort. It is to see yourself as deserving of patience, even in the midst of struggle. There is great courage in choosing to continue imperfectly. Each time you rise after falling, you prove that strength does not live in perfection but in endurance. The cracks in the path, the stumbles along the way, and the tears shed in silence do not diminish your persistence. They deepen it. They are evidence of a spirit that refuses to give in, not through force, but through steady, compassionate return. Never giving up is not about reaching the end without scars. It is about walking forward with those scars and still finding beauty in the journey. It is about trusting that even if today's effort feels small, it still matters. It is about knowing that persistence without compassion burns out the soul, but persistence with compassion builds resilience that lasts a lifetime. When you choose this kind of persistence, you discover that the true strength of never giving up is not in doing it perfectly, but in never abandoning yourself along the way.